Zippity-doo-dah! Hello, greetings. Yeah, you want to know what that brown thing behind me is? It's a $700 roll of leather. Quality leather is not cheap. Yeah, there's a lot of leather there. I picked it up today. It's quite a heavy roll. I need it. It was the easiest storage place for it. I'll move it later. I don't think anybody cares. If I didn't say what it was, everybody would be asking me what that large brown cylinder is behind me. It's leather. Very expensive harness leather, too, by the way. I've been contacted recently, both in comment and email. Things kind of come in waves. It's kind of startling. You'll go months without hearing anything from anybody about a particular subject or topic, and all of a sudden there'll be a bunch of people. And I haven't done any videos recently about top book recommendations, but maybe it came up in people's feeds. Maybe that was it. Anyway, a lot of people thanking me about the books that I recommended other people to check out for top recommended reading. I said they've really expanded their minds a lot, and I appreciate that. Anything to help. And I'm going to point out this image here. It's called the Cartwheel Galaxy. This is a new higher resolution multispectral layer. I think it combines infrared and visible and partial ultraviolet of the so-called Cartwheel Galaxy. They're actually speculating on the galaxy. They can determine redshift and blueshift and basically the type of stars from the spectral emissions, and use interferometry about certain types of stars in this particular galaxy. And this is a lot better image. I remember staring at this image countless years ago for this, since this much improved image came out from the James Webb telescope. Someone's going to leave a comment below, that image is fake. Yeah, okay, sure it is, right? There's a giant conspiracy going on galaxy images from a multi-megabillion, I forget how much it costs, at least $1 billion. Someone correct me on how much the James Webb telescope costs. Giant conspiracy on intergalactic images of galaxies. Anyway, I don't address questions or statements like that. They're really quite ridiculous. Anyway, other than the determination about some things that they can, like redshift and blueshift, the galaxy appears to be incredibly old, just like our Milky Way galaxy and these other galaxies that are actually off in the distance, which are also too Milky Way galaxy. We can technically call them spiral arm galaxies. You can actually see here the actual counterclockwise rolling up, if you will, of much of the galaxy towards the center. Now, they made something that's based upon pure speculation about the Cartwheel Galaxy, and I'll read it here. The galaxy was once a normal spiral galaxy before it apparently underwent a head-on bullseye-style collision. They're basically saying this is another galaxy that collided with the center of that. But this is all pure speculation that is not demonstrable from the empirical data that's gathered from redshift, blueshift, interferometry, and other spectral data collection from this galaxy. And then people, of course, been staring at it for many decades. Of course, this is a much better resolution image. Here's another fact that's incredibly important before I get the main part of this video. And that is that astronomers are not field theorists, and field theorists are not astronomers, and never the twain shall meet between the two. I don't know of any of them that are major field theorists that are also too astronomers. And unfortunately, it's the case that people don't reconcile the simple fact that everything in natura naturans, or Mother Nature, or natural order, is absolutely interconnected. You know, this idea, and colleges themselves, even though the colleges are completely corrupt and defunct and they don't really teach anything, all they want you to do is memorize stuff. And there's a reason why doctors are the second leading cause of death after cancer, is that to become a doctor, the only thing you have to do is chug a lot of caffeine and be really good at memorization to actually pass all your tests. There's some other things, of course, involved, but really the major thing is a lot of memorization. The colleges actually advocate this transdisciplinary approach, like if you're going to major in one subject, they want you to take some peripherals, and that's always been a good thing. And they actually got that from the Greeks and Aristotelian philosophers and scientists of old, but they don't actually follow it themselves. They think, you know, here's astronomy, excuse me, and here is field theory. But combining all these things, it actually makes perfect sense that I'm going to state something about the spiral arm galaxy that mimics basically everything else in nature, because Mother Nature, Natura Naturans, is self-similar from macro to micro. So the stuff that we actually see in this galaxy, we should logically and obviously see in all other phenomena. Everything is capacitance, resistance, permeability, and permittivity, and everything of the conjugate geometry of the universe is force and motion, which is one thing, and inertia and acceleration, which is the other. And of course there's two conjugate geometries of fields in the entire universe, that of the magnetic and that of the dielectric. The actual intermediary between the fight, if you will, for lack of a better term, between the magnetic and dielectric, which are respectively the geometries of the hyperboloid and that of the torus, is of course the plane of inertia. All life and matter, or most of it, exists at the plane of inertia. Same is true of Earth, and of course Earth sits at this zone, this temperate zone relative to the Sun. Not too close, not too far away. So there's this happy medium that actually follows the golden ratio. Actually, if you take, there's a website dedicated to this. I think it's called Spira Solaris. That if you actually take the Sun as XYZ coordinate of 0 and 0, 0, and you plot out Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, Jupiter, and so forth, that, and by the way, 1 over 5 to the power of -2, which is 0.381966 something something, which equals life, according to the divided line section of Plato, 509d to 511, where Earth actually sits relative to the Sun is right at 1 over 5 to the power of -2, or life itself. That everything follows this simple geometry of the fight between the conjugate magnetic and the dielectric. This appears to be an extremely old galaxy. You can actually see everything spiraling towards the center, unlike a typical spiral arm galaxy, which you can actually see over here to the left, typical of the Milky Way galaxy. Everything, most everything, except for the periphery, is spiraling in towards the center of the black hole. Like, once again, everything force and motion, inertia, and acceleration. So this Cartwheel galaxy is so we've called it. This is just a discharge back into counter space of matter. But as I've pointed out in many countless videos, all matter, of course, is a compound of hydrogen. Hydrogen is the most simplex form of matter, and everything is a compound of hydrogen. That's absolutely undeniable. There's no such thing as a neutron. It's an arbitrary conceptual abstraction. They do exist, but we've given this a name to a particular charge state relative to the nucleus. All science agrees that all free neutrons become protons. And this means what we call a neutron is an arbitrary abstraction of a proton. So there's only one fundamental particle. Nikola Tesla, Charles Proteus Steinmetz, Heaviside, Eric Dollar, they all said there's no such thing as this charge-carrying particle that we call the electron. Even the so-called discoverer of same, which was J.J. Thomson, said the electron is one unit of dielectric conduction, and that, of course, is exactly what it is. Lightning, for example, we all grew up, most of us, I think, grew up thinking that lightning went from cloud to ground, and none of us were really taught about stepped leaders of lightning actually sending up stepped leaders for its grounding up from the ground. We think that lightning does ground itself in the ground. Well, it's a discharge nexus, but it doesn't actually discharge into the ground. It's a discharge into counter space. It's I think even Eric Dollard used the exact words, and he's right on this, that it's a desaturation effect, a horizontal desaturation effect into counter space. And none of us have ever looked at lightning correctly. But understanding field theory, lightning becomes incredibly simple. It's a desaturation horizontal discharge into counter space. Just like this matter you can actually see is spiraling in towards the center. And it's like, well, we see a spiral, of course, we see spiral arms on a typical spiral arm galaxy, but things here are actually spiraling in towards the center. So what we have here is the end cycle of force and motion, and somewhere past the beginning cycle of increasing inertia and acceleration. And the fascinating fact of this is that the universe is perpetually breathing in and breathing out. It spits out matter. You could look that up. They're called galactic jets. There are also two called astrophysical jets, where the black hole at the precession of its geomagnetic axis, which is called the Lamore frequency, is emitting out trillions and trillions of tons of hydrogen. Astronomers have correctly calculated that these are really old stars here. This was the remnant of a spiral arm galaxy, but it was in the collision of two galaxies. That on their part in their commentary is purely speculative, and they say, well, everything right here is a bunch of new stars. Well, that makes sense of the mass of the black hole at the center, which they all agree, me and including them, that there's a black hole at the center of this galaxy, as is agreed upon, basically the center of every normal galaxy. There are oblong galaxies and irregular galaxies that don't seemingly appear to have this, so they're kind of like oddball galaxies, and who knows how life actually forms in an oddball galaxy. I won't even begin to speculate about that. That the galactic jets are not being emitted trillions and trillions of light years out into space like a supermassive galaxy, rather only a short distance where we actually have new star formation right here. So they agree these are new stars, they agree these are old stars, but what this blatantly appears to be, that it follows every aspect of Mother Nature, natura naturans, is that new stars are forming there from the hydrogen that's being emitted from the black hole at the center of that, and this is an extremely old galaxy. Everything rolls out and everything rolls back up again. This looks exactly like a lot of different things. It looks like a standing wave, it looks like a scalar pulse, and it also too looks like light. We have rarefaction and compression. Rarefaction, where of course there's incredibly enormous electromagnetism in the case of the coaxial circuit that is light. Light is a coaxial circuit. I don't know if you've ever seen the cross-section of a coax cable. Just Google cross-section of a coax cable. And of course field compression. This is where of course scientists came up with this atomistic, materialistic idea of the photon. When the electromagnetic disappears, we actually have this compressional formation, which is nothing different than a dielectric condensate, which at incredibly high frequency is hydrogen. I've humorously called it hard light, but ultra high energy light, well above that of gamma, because gamma radiation is light. Visible light is of course light. So is X-ray, so is radio. That's not my opinion, it's a fact. These are various intensity scales along the electromagnetic spectrum. And the smaller the space, the higher the capacitance. Gamma radiation spatially, its spatial footprint is infinitely less that of infrared, but its power and capacitance is incredibly high. So we're looking here of the rolling up of the galaxy. And the fascinating thing is, it's kind of like the baby that gives birth to itself. And that baby, of course this sounds rather horrid, would consume the baby that gave birth to it, and the whole cycle repeats itself. Talk about absolute efficiency on a galactic scale that just, it fits with everything of field theory, it fits with all observed phenomena. Matter is nothing other than high energy light. Everything from gold, helium, uranium, all elements other than hydrogen are just compounds of hydrogen. They're not different elements on the periodic table. What if our teacher and your teacher said something as simple, logical, and undeniable as, children, today we're going to look at the periodic table of elements and talk about some of the elements. But really there's only one element, and all these others are compounded modalities of hydrogen. Wow. Divine simplicity. Absolute simplicity in the most absolute sense. Most of the matter, of course, in this plane of inertia are inverse geometries of the torus and the hyperboloid, and of course this matter is sitting at the plane of inertia. Who knows how many, of course, worlds there are that we actually have life. I mean, if we look at the darkest part of the sky, we see thousands of galaxies, and that's supposedly James Webb Telescope, one of his first images covered the square area of space, the darkest part of space to human eyes, of course, of a grain of sand held at arm's length distance, and within that tiny little area, greatly magnified with I think a 6-hour exposure, there was seen hundreds of galaxies, and they're better resolution than Hubble's deep field view, which of course fascinated people for actually fascinated people for well over a decade. At least it did to people that were interested in the universe, of course. Interestingly enough, of course, light begets more light. What does this mean regarding these galaxies? Of course, matter is nothing other than super high energy light. Well, think about it for a second. These super high energy production chambers that human beings have irrationally called black holes, and they're not really black, and they're definitely not holes. They're actually places where matter has been overcome by dielectric acceleration, so it's a supermass with no magnitude in the visible universe. They actually beget more light in the forms of galactic jets and astrophysical jets, both one and the same thing, different names for the same thing. So this spatial discharge, which is now completely discharged in entropy back into counter space, is producing more ultra-high energy light, which is hydrogen. And compounded is every element in the universe. And this, of course, forms what human beings call mass and matter. And you get enough of this, and it'll collapse back in on itself. So light, which is what matter is, generates or begets more light. High energy light equals more matter. Ultra high energy matter, these condensates, which are ultra high energy light, are just black holes, which themselves generate more matter. So light begets light. It sounds almost religious, sounds metaphysical, but metaphysics and physics are not two different things. This is, of course, what materialists and atomists would like us to believe. Oh, it's metaphysics, I'm interested in empirical science. Well, these empirical scientists have never defined the term field. They've never actually defined the term energy. They say, yeah, we define energy. Energy is the ability to do work. Well, that's an abstraction of connotation of what energy does, but it doesn't define energy. So this is where you ask them a direct question and you get an indirect, incorrect answer. So, well, sure, we defined energy. It's the ability to do work. Well, that's like saying a horse, it's like, what's a horse? Well, a horse pulls a plow. Or a horse is what people ride to get somewhere. It's like, well, that's true, but that doesn't tell you the essence of what a horse is. By saying energy is the ability to do work does not define energy, and these people have never defined a field. Let's say lines of force. Force of what, by what, and upon what. Lines, that's a conceptual abstraction. There's nothing in nature called lines. There's nothing you can point to in the physical universe, the cosmos, sthos, that we can actually call lines. This is nothing other than a visualization of the constructive and destructive interference between the magnetic and the dielectric. Because the same reason why we actually see these spiraling arms of matter and stars spiraling in towards the center of this very, very old galaxy is generating new stars here. These are the old stars over here. By combining metaphysics, physics, a lifelong fascination with astronomy and the images and looking at them for what Mother Nature says that they are, because Mother Nature is really, really, really simple. She's not complicated at all. Combine physics, metaphysics, field theory, and acute observations. Using a sharp mind, you can see what Mother Nature is actually doing. Light begets more light. High energy light equals matter. Matter is high energy light. All compounds of matter, are what we call the elements, are compounds of high energy light in its most simple form, i.e. hydrogen. Ultra high energy matter condensates just like light. This is what scientists have called the photon. That's just a coaxial circuit of light, the conceptual abstraction of seeing a pulse rarefaction. Like, well, this is a photon. Well, you can call it a photon you want. It's not a particle. It's just a condensate where the electromagnetic disappears, and you actually have this wrinkle in the fabric of the cosmos, the substrate of the cosmos, which of course is the ether. It makes things really, really simple. We're looking at nothing other than a macro example of light itself. This would be the electrical and magnetic. Here would be the so-called photon, which is nothing other than a scalar pulse or a standing wave, or what scientists have called a photon, which is not a particle. There's such a thing as a light particle. It's completely ridiculous. Unless, of course, we're talking about ultra, ultra high energy light. Then we can talk about a light particle, and that, of course, is the photon. Since all free neutrons turn into protons, which every branch of science agrees upon, and the best experts in the entire universe, well, the world, Tesla, Heaviside, Maxwell, Dollar, so on, they say there's no such thing as an electron particle. This means there's only one fundamental particle of the whole universe. Everything is a compound derivative of hydrogen. This means the entire universe, with enough intelligence and certainly enough wisdom, and the ability to synthesize or put metaphysics in a blender with astronomy, with metaphysics and field theory. Stick all of that in the blender, then everything becomes really simple. You don't like distinguish the banana anymore in the blender, or the little bits of ice in the blender, or the strawberries in the blender. You just like, here's Mother Nature. It's just a smoothie, a tasty smoothie, right? We don't really taste the banana or the strawberry necessarily. We taste this smoothie. Kind of a crude analogy maybe, huh? But nature just becomes so simple. It explains light, it explains galaxies, it explains the conjugate geometry of the universe. Everything follows this conjugate geometry of the hyperboloid and the torus, i.e. magnetism and dielectricity respectively, which are nothing different than the yin and the yang of the entire universe. There are no dualities in nature. There's only principle and attribute, so. Anyhow, let me know what you think. I enjoy these images from the James Webb Telescope. The astronomers with their PhDs will look at these things and they think they're beautiful. And of course they'll do spectral analysis and they'll look at redshift and blue shift, and they'll make precise calculations about what they think is, but they can't see the big picture of anything. It's kind of like that old analogy about the blind people feeling a horse or an elephant. One person feels the elephant's ears, and it's like it's large and thin and floppy. Another blind person feels the elephant's legs, and the other one feels, they've got a small bit of the picture from what they got their hands on, but none of them have eyes to see, this is what an elephant is. Astronomers are exactly like this. They built a $1 billion, I think it's well over $1 billion, telescope. The beautiful images, but they can't actually synthesize or correct something a child would understand. Statement about the universe. Like, let's look at this image. We can make a very simple statement about the nature of the universe. So once we understand the fundamental primers of the universe, which is the conjugate geometry of the universe, the second absolute of Mother Nature is force and motion, inertia and acceleration. Yes? Spatial, counterspatial. Everything is light or a compound of light. Higher the energy, the greater the capacitance. We have new star formation here because the black hole is generating out more matter. That's why we have new stars here and really, really old stars out here. Anyway, I droned on unnecessarily at the end of this video. I apologize. I love looking at images like this. I look at it in UV, I look at it in ultraviolet, which is available on the Cartwheel galaxy. And it just makes nature so much more simple. Instead of like, ooh, what a pretty image. Isn't that beautiful? Well, what can we say about this, understanding the fundamental principles of Mother Nature? Because she's such a simple chick. She's really, really simple. Anyway, thanks so much for watching. If you want to contact me or anything else below in the description, there I am, via email or whatnot. Thank you. Goodbye.